fastest growing economy in the world to looking to double her current annual GDP of close to USD 3.5 trillion to USD 7 trillion by 2027 and to USD 10 trillion by 2030. India has fast emerged as a key contributor to global growth that will alone contribute 15% of the global growth in 2023. Our next speaker is a formally trained economist and comes with more than 2 decades of professional experience in public policy, corporate affairs, economic analysis, and corporate strategy. Now, she is currently responsible for managing government affairs and public policy, corporate reputation, sustainability, and CSR, and is part of the executive committee leadership team for Pernod Ricard India to talk about the factors that are driving India's growth juggernaut. We have with us the executive vice president for corporate affairs, communication, sustainability at Pernod Ricard India, Yashika Singh, in conversation with Aisha Faridi, National Editor 18 Now.
I didn't know you were an economist. I have very more questions for you.
Well, let's go then. I think it's a tough act to follow after that last one.
It is, isn't it? But Yashika, tell me, a private company such as yours, Pernod Ricard, how is it that you try and helm and make sure that as a company you do enough in the country that you operate in, India is what we're talking about here, to try and instill and further the economic juggernaut?
Yeah, thank you so much. A lot of the speakers before me have done so much of my job, right? They have sort of outlined the growth in India, the past and the future. I'm so enthused by what the minister just said. 35 trillion by 2047, that's incredible, right? We've been in India for 30 years. This year, Pernod Ricard completes 30 years in India. It's been a fantastic journey. And I think the next 30 look good, if those are the sort of numbers that one is, hearing about. We see ourselves at Pernod Ricard as creators of conviviality. We see ourselves as people who create human connections. So that sense prevails through all our activities, all our operations, all our sales, commercial activities, including our sustainability activities and the work that we do with our stakeholders. 97% of our portfolio is made in India and sold in India. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that we contribute to the growth trajectory for India. We have operations in India across 29 different locations. And by doing so, we are adding to the economic activity, to the jobs that we create. We create about 1,400 jobs directly, another 10,000 indirectly. We also have a huge program around sustainability, which is very much geared towards the government's Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, but even beyond that to the social and economic agenda, development agenda of the government. So I think those are the various ways in which private companies such as ourselves, will contribute to this economic juggernaut. And I think we'll be one of the, private companies will be one of the biggest factors to drive this 35 trillion growth. Through meeting many of these factors such as operating in India and creating sustainable operations.
So tell me a little bit more about your initiatives, because more and more the focus now when it comes to companies, especially when you look at them from an investment perspective, is ESG. You want companies around you to be ESG compliant. How is it that a company such as yours is conscious about what you're doing, not just for the economy, but for the environment and climate as such as well?
Yeah, I think ESG is environment, social governance. I think most companies are starting to recognize that this is a very important stakeholder, which is the investor class, which is really looking at the ESG factors. But more and more, it's sort of going beyond that class of stakeholder. It is consumers, it's the society at large, it's your customers, governments. Everybody is starting to look at ESG parameter and holding companies responsible for it, right? And when Pernod Ricard looks at it, we look at it from a returns to responsibility factor and not just returns to investment. How do we look at it? We look at it from an entire value chain perspective. So across our entire value chain, we try and build practices which are sustainable. We, oddly enough, people don't realize it. Our product is actually an agricultural product. So, comes from grain.
Technically, yes.
Yes, comes from grain. And so our all at different stages of recognition and mitigation when it comes to this factor, and that's absolutely fine. I think we all need to be able to do what we can at this point of time while educating ourselves about the implications. When we look at it, we look at our responsibility extending beyond just our operations. We look at the entire vendor and supplier chain as well, and we look at downwards as to how do we empower, enhance the workings of our vendors as well, over and above what we need to do. So procurement, the way we procure, could that change? Where we procure from and the people who are producing it for us, could we encourage them to try different ways of doing things? We actually have an ongoing program where we are looking at, adding efficiency as well as sustainability into our operations as well as our supply chain. And it's a very conscious driven program which over the next 10 years is looking to, meet targets on scope 3 climate reduction, scope 3 carbon reduction targets that are being built into the way we do our business. So that's how we are looking at it, and very, very purposefully working out exactly where the issues are coming in and then building in metrics to deal with those issues.
Yashika, you've been here for the last 30 years, like you said, in India. You perhaps would be best placed to tell us how Indian consumer patterns and behaviors are changing.
Yeah, consumers are also at different points. Isha, it's all consumers are, the Indian consumer is a very varied consumer. Consuming at different price points, right? And so therefore that informs a lot of their choices and their information and the knowledge and how they're making those decisions. I think it's incumbent upon companies like ours, who are leaders in the sector, to sometimes push the envelope on consumer, what is acceptable to the consumer. We have done something like that. Our product comes in an outer packaging, which is a cardboard packaging. And as of last year, we did away with the outer packaging on a significant portion of our portfolio. So our product now is sold without a packaging, which is a big step. I cannot imagine any FMCG company sort of stepping up and saying we'll sell our products without the outer package. We took that step, and obviously we were ready for some amount of consumer backlash, because our consumer knows the product on the basis of what it looks like in packaging, right? That's the relationship the consumer has with the product, right? And we did away with that. And we did it because, we knew that by doing away, we were removing 500 million monocartons. So those 500 million monocartons in a year, gone. What that meant was 7,300 tons of carbon reduction coming from packaging material. What that meant was 2.5 lakh trees not being cut any longer to make that packaging. What that meant was that we got a much better water footprint, because we were no longer using water to create that packaging, right? And what that also meant was that our waste to landfill coming from packaging went to zero. All fantastic outcomes, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We are very proud of it. But what that meant was, this was great for the company, but was the consumer seeing all this? Was the consumer involved enough to realize that the product is still a great product, but it's a more sustainable product? Yeah. And that took a fair amount of work. Yeah. It meant that the company had to step up and teach and educate and ensure that the consumer was still accepting of the product. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need to do that. You need to sort of, push beyond.
Yeah, it's for companies in India to actually change consumer behavior, right?
Yeah.
But Yashika, here's to next 30 years.
Absolutely.
All the very best, and thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Thank you.